that's there. That's there. Lines. There we go. Over here. Over there. And there's his video. Ezra. Jana.
Oh wait, no, I'm lying. I've got some anime merch. Hold on. I'm so proud of him. He's my favorite too. It's like it was one of those boxes where you don't know which character you're gonna get, and I was like, oh, I want the Inosuke. I do not want Lightning God. I hate his name, so I hate someone I forget his name. The yellow one. Yeah. Zenitsu. I was like, I really don't want Zenitsu, but I really wanted this because I was like, do you want packets? I do that too. And then I felt like something really pointy. I'm like, either this is Inosuke or it is Zenitsu. Like, I'm gonna risk it. I went to this like secondhand bookstore and they had a ton of gachapons with anime. And they had a JoJo one with my glorious pink street dragon inside. And I wanted it so bad. It was $20 per spin. I was like, no, you can't make me. I'm sorry. I also think she's really cool. I like her.
All right. Here we go. KJ's live on the live stream. He can hear me. Everybody's here now. Here is... Who is this? This is Andre.
This is my stuff for the week. The Unity project that we were working on. It was fairly simple to get through.
Let me just open my Unity so it's open. Continue.
I ran into some issues while working on it, but it does seem to have all the functionality that were required while working on it. If I can actually press start on this. Sorry. There we go. So everything does work as intended. There is a small issue, but everything does seem to function. The spinning wheel, the balls, the glowing bits. I'm not sure why. You can see it here. Maybe I missed something while looking through the streams, but doesn't seem to the glowing objects don't seem to glow like how I want them to. But
oh yeah, that happened to me as well. It's like, why is it not glowing in game mode?
Is one checkbox, which as soon as this launches here, I'll let him continue, and then I'll...
everything does function, especially the lights. I used the directional rotation light. There was probably an easier way to do it, but I like the sun effect here. So, on, off, on, off. Most of these...
Oh, clever. All right, so he linked the on and off to rotation, to animation, rather than just turning the light object on and off. Cool. It gives you that sort of, yeah, I mean, you want to... The cheapest way to have a day-night cycle in your game is just to rotate the...
These are just using the animation. The light specifically uses... let's see if I can find it. It uses two of them, which I had to turn off the loops for, and the default stop state. Just so I don't know if this is necessary. It probably isn't. So
I think it is.
So I probably don't even need it. But it looks like I did.
Well, I mean, you have two, and you're going from one to the other. I suppose you could start on one, but it would still play. I think.
But As for creating prefabs for a scene, you want to obviously make the material inside of Unity or some other program that would allow you to create a material mainly, and you would bring it into here, and then you would put it into your assets folder right here, so you can use it for later. Especially if it's a object that you want to have a functionality with, you will want to parent it to an empty, just so it doesn't maintain the position of it.
Right. Parenting to the empty, you're making a child of the empty parent, allows us to move it around in world space without the animation snapping back to the world space coordinates. Because the child position is relative to the parent. Everyone's got this in their notebook, yes? Yes.
Everything. But aside from that, there was a small issue, which is the cube that I create. I don't know why it does this, but it has the cube that's used for reference disappears as well, and that makes it so there's nothing to reference for the spawn button to work from, so it just kind of stops working after the initial lifetime stops. See, like it lasts for like 10 seconds.
Okay, I addressed this specifically. Can someone help Andre here? So his cube stops work. The spawn button for the cube stops working after 10 seconds. This is set to 10 seconds.
Pretty sure it's because the destroy needs to be extended more, maybe, or maybe taken out.
No, not in this case. He's the spawn. He is spawning a game object. He drug the game object from here into the spawn script. You don't want to spawn. You almost never want to spawn game objects. You want to spawn prefabs from here, the asset, right? Because that is not going to get destroyed ever, right? The template is always there, right? If you make templates, you don't want to delete the template. That kind of defeats the purpose, right? And you can't, really without, pressing delete down here. And now we all know that if you highlight something down here and to delete it, you are stopping yourself and being like, wait, is that really what I want to do? Because these are all files. You're like permanently deleting stuff. Up here, these are just game objects, which get deleted over the course of the game. And so wherever, you don't have it selected right now, but wherever the spawner is, here, select the spawner, and in the spawner script, don't drag from here over there. Drag from here down here, right? The thing that's over here may be a prefab that you drug up from down here, but it's now a prefab instantiation of the game object.
If I keep pressing it here, if I just keep pressing it here, it will eventually stop. Let's see. I think if I keep spamming it, it'll prevent the base one from despawn. Nope, there it goes. So, there you go.
Yep, and so it happened right after that initial one that you put here destroyed itself. So, good. All right, so the issue with the camera, if your camera is not glowing, it is select the camera object and then right here, post-processing. You need to check that box. It's kind of ridiculous that it's not checked by default because the glowing is happening by default. It's kind of a part of the default volume, which we have not made. It's just part of the default Unity scene at this point. So that box right there is what Arlinka and Andre, and then I think I saw someone else post about that as well. I'll say it again as we're working. Cool. Good. Nice work, Andre. Here's Arlinka's.
Okay, here's my assignment for the week. Let me just hit play real quick.
So here's my interactive balls bouncing.
Very-
And this one activates the little flashlight. This one just, this cube just spins if you click it. On the button bounces the balls. This button deactivates the lights. This one reactivates them. I don't know why. I only animated it to go down and up once, but for some reason the animator is playing it twice. Strange. And then you can spawn in this capsule, and this fan blade just interacts with it. Also, for some reason, the gameplay mode is not having the proper emission. So I don't know what's happening there.
Yeah, that's that post-process.
Some sort of setting somewhere, I guess. Okay.
Cool. Great. Very nice. So the other thing is, as we move forward, right, the default Unity scene, we've been making these planes. Over here, I think you can make it look a lot better by just not seeing this, perfectly straight horizon line in everything. And so at this point, that means just sort of moving the camera around there, because I like the way it looks over here a little bit better. But great. Animation looks really good. Everything's going there. In terms of the thing playing twice, it could be the transition time. It's set to loop, and then if you have the transitioning back to the stop, it might do it while it's transitioning. With a really, really short animation like that, that could happen there. But we'll look at some other ways to go about that. Cool. Alexis.
Hi everyone, here is my scene. Super simple. Didn't give myself enough time on this, and therefore when I ran into issues, it really set me back. I had a lot of fun doing the first parts of this. Obviously, the squash and stretch was really cool.
Yeah, it looks like yours sort of moves over a little bit there. Something a little bit strange with the very first position.
I got the stuff on, the light off and on. I got these to spin, but when I tried to animate it, I go here. I animated the child, which is supposed to do with the prefab. So yeah, I animated the child, and first of all, it's only moving once. I think that they're supposed to go at the same time. I don't know. But I tried to add this here, with the simple spin to stop transition. I don't know if that's right. I thought I was doing correctly, but I didn't have time to figure out.
Oh. Any ideas here? Why, based on this information, why might this not work?
Could be because there's a space in simple spin, which the system does not like.
That's a good intuition. However, she does have that, right? Click on Event Collider. Yeah?
I see them. I don't remember, but on below the runtime only, is there something wrong with that?
Maybe, but even if she didn't do that there, I thought everybody had checked that box because that's a project setting. So everybody still worked in the same project this week, right? You just made a new scene in the same project. You want to do that this week. Yes.
Does she have a collider on the open?
Right. No. That's the problem here. As we use more and more scripts, some scripts will, they themselves are components, and they will require other components. They're sort of built to talk to components that are on the same object. And so that's what you have here. So you put the click on event collider, whereas the collider is on this here. And so it needs to go on that object, not on the very top. So that was a tough one.
I don't know. Do we animate the prefab or the child?
Yeah, so keep that in mind. That really depends on the script. Some scripts you could put anywhere, right? Like there's kind of like general configuration kind of stuff. And then other ones need to be on specific objects that have specific.
I can't remember. They did it.
So I try to do that in the title, right? So this one says collider in the title. It needs a collider.
On the parent, I mean, not the prefab, the parent. So I don't know if it's supposed to be maybe. But yeah, I mean, I definitely want to give myself some more time to do the other things like time destroy. I need to get to know this a little bit better. I'm definitely going to be taking more time. Just it's a new program, so it's tough to get used to. So for creating a prefab, you got to build the object first. So, you know, making this shape first and then creating an empty parent. And then animating the child object, right? And then turning the object into a prefab by dragging it into the prefabs folder and then reusing it in the scene and then editing as needed by clicking double that.
Yeah, exactly right.
So yeah, I mean, I'm really trying. Yeah, I'm excited to see what we can do with these skills. You know, even though this is very basic and very not what I wanted to do, I'm still learning, so I'm happy with it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Alexis. And then everybody, yeah, so this class in particular, I try to smooth out the runway for you guys as much as possible. However, this class, more so than the other classes, it is possible to get like real stuck in terms of like, you know, something happened and now nothing works or something like that. And so with that knowledge, time management here becomes more critical in this class. Having a question on Friday when the thing is due Tuesday, because you started working on it on Friday, is a good situation to be in. Like, probably can get that question answered by me or someone else on Discord or whatever. Having, you know, a mission critical error at 7:30 on Tuesday is much more difficult to be addressed, right? So, I mean, of course, manage your time, start the work early. Like, those are obvious things. It doesn't happen every time, I understand. But with this class, even just, you know, booting it up, starting, maybe not even doing any quote unquote real work, but just sort of like doing some things so you can just sort of know whether or not you're going to run into a big issue is helpful. You know, because it's the nature of the beast here. You know, there isn't a similar thing in Blender where besides Blender totally crashing, like the idea of Blender not compiling, that's not really a thing, which you can totally run into here. Okay, here's KJ.
Okay, hello. This is my video for week 2's assignment. So I didn't get completely everything, but I feel like I got mostly everything in here.
Good. All right.
I don't have
Even if you didn't get everything, follow my advice, right? Stay with the class. Show me what you got. You'll get caught up next week.
light. I don't have light buttons yet. Do have a spawn button. Do have all of this. One problem I did run into. Well, first let me show you. This works. That spins really fast.
Yeah, so like the interacting with the physics here, having something animate slower usually works a little bit better. And then, yeah, KJ needs to click that post-processing button because he's getting the glow over here, but not over here.
For some reason, it was spinning slow earlier. I don't know what I did, but that spawned stuff. I couldn't get these to not snap like that. I don't know what happened there, but
Yeah, you just have to look at your position keyframes. There's something to happen with the very first or last position keyframe that, you know, it's coming to a rest, but not at the initial position. So something happened along the way. This is that piece of advice I gave you about smooth loops. The best way to make smooth loops, because looping animation is the default here in all of our things, is to take the beginning keyframe and copy paste it to the end. That way, whatever you do in the middle, you always end up back at the same place.
there's snapping for some reason on the Z-axis. I really couldn't figure out why that was happening. But
Yeah, you sound much better.
yeah, I think I think that's it. I think that's all I got for now. Yep. Everything works pretty much, so that's good. All right, that's it. See
Okay,
ya.
that's coming along. Yeah, a little bit more to do there. Do something with the lights, that kind of thing. And then, yeah, your mic is kind of like popping at points, but it's definitely louder this week, so that's good. Ezra.
Alright, here is my animation. So this automatically spins.
Yeah, it spins really, really fast. So, I mean,
I spawn the cubes and spin.
expecting it to like shred those cubes into a million pieces, which would actually be, you know, now knowing what you know, like having a cube come down and then have something else shredded into a bunch of smaller cubes, like not super easy. Like you would need to do some work.
Sort of knocks him off. If I press it again, it's a little bit more exciting. I have the glowing objects in the front, and if I click this cube, it just spins one time. And then this ball will do a squash and stretch. And I can turn this light on wherever it came from, and I can turn it off. So in this Unity scene, I set up a button that spawns fallen cubes, as you've seen, and I click to spin and glowing objects just for fun. I also added buttons to turn the light on and off, and all the animated prefabs, like the bouncing ball, include their animation, so any instance works automatically. Let's try this again. I love that one. Anyways, thanks for watching.
Cool. Great. That's all working good. Here's Janice.
Hello, this is what I've got for the little game thing we did. So starting off here, I have man, this takes a while. I don't think it runs very well with OBS. So on clicker. Oh, I thought, okay, it's still loading, that's why I thought there was an issue with it. My favorite way to play with it is by letting them go, and it just, yep. Lots of fun. And then I have here like a glowing ball, then this one, because I want to do like kind of a slime ball, which was really easy to do. It'd be cool if we could add like sound effects. I guess for the question, that's what I'd like to know more about is sound.
I spent all day on Monday answering that question, so there you go. Yeah. That's no
Effects. And then here you can turn the light off, you turn the light on. And then I have a little Easter egg because I want to challenge myself a little bit here. And yeah, it's just dog bouncing. And I want to have it like in the little platform, so it wouldn't be like something that you'd think to click on.
So where you just click in like empty space there? There's like an invisible button?
On the platform that I have for the balls, like I wanted to add something.
Oh, okay. That's the thing that has the collider that triggers the dog thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice squash and stretch on there, especially with it moving across the screen.
And these are the animations down here, and then I have the materials. Another question that I would have is like, if this is okay, if this is acceptable, like, because the actual model for the dog, it has like one face on the front and one on the back, and I just like to know if there's a way to like make it so there's only one and it's not stretched.
Yeah. Yeah. It has to do with the mesh and the UV map of the mesh, and we'll get to a lot of that. So yeah, but next week, I guess we'll spend some more time in Blender on Monday and get to a bunch.
But we'll probably get into that. And then these are the prefabs I have. I was gonna do something with the little plus signs, but I changed my mind. So I have the cylinders, which the model for the cylinders doesn't look right there. It's probably not updated. And then the bouncing balls. And yeah, that should be about it.
Cool. Great. That looks great. Well done. Jacob says, the dog is cute. I love it. Exclamation point. Jana says thank you.
Hey guys, it's me Punchy. This is my my project here that I got so far. Well, not so far. Whatever. I did it. That's all that matters. So I tinkered, as you can see, I tinkered around quite a bit with this.
So is this the background music of the game or your video?
By adding things that weren't even in the discussion at all, but I just wanted to do it because I wanted to. And that took me a long time. Surprisingly, it took me a long time. But
okay, as long as you're happy doing that, right? I mean, in terms of everybody else, if you're strapped for time, try to focus on the thing we actually worked on. If you want to go off the path, that's fine. As long as, like, I talk about this often in terms of your capacity for the unknown. We have different levels of this, right? And so as long as you're prepared and have time to, perhaps become lost in the void, then by all means, like, you'll learn something. But for if you're dealing with less time, then keep that in mind.
I have 3 prefabs right here, and this one you'll see coming up when I start playing. I got the spinning device, spawn button, these little guys, and this little this plane that I conjured up in Microsoft Paint. So let's take a look at some of the animations here. Actually, you know what? No, let's see it in action. Let's see what we got in action. So as you can see here, we got all this going on. I even added sound effects with different pitches. And as you can see, each of them have their own independent lights. But when you click on this one, it spins, glows, and turns off all the other lights. So it's like a 3-in-1? I don't know. I'm not counting. But like how I'm including the little like emission glow when it swishes back down. And here's the cube that gets pushed around. And everything seems to be working pretty well. Even added the.
Who is it on the cubes?
It's Kazuma Kiryu on the cube with the SpongeBob shirt.
Who?
Kazuma Kiryu from the game series Yakuza.
Okay.
But it's really low quality and he has a SpongeBob shirt on.
Okay.
I was this close to adding the lizard sound effects to one of my buttons, but I thought I'd rather use my time to work on my personal projects.
The lizard sound effect from Yakuza as well, or
No,
just
from it's a Disney show. Have you ever seen the advertisement where there's just lizards staring at an iPhone, pressing the lizard emoji, and it keeps saying lizard?
I don't think I've seen that. Is that a new one or no? Yeah. Oh.
The destruction script to it so it doesn't lag up the game. And yeah, so what I did here, let's get to the ball here. These are two separate animations that I made that are linked together. And surprisingly, this actually turned out really good. This is just a modification of the first bounce that I did. Here are the curves for the rotation. Oh, what? I don't know.
Okay, two separate animations meaning you.
Basically, I gave like made two animations though, but the second animation with the spinning one was just a built off one from the original animation,
Okay.
which was used on the red balls.
Okay, and so the spinning animation is on a separate object from the squash.
I had two spinning animations, I guess then.
Okay.
What's going on there? Hang on, let me see here. That's weird. I don't know why it's like that. But it works. It works. I don't know. Let me go to this one here. And this is the default bounce animation here. And it looks really nice. I am very proud of how this turned out. Where the hell? Where is this?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They're just. I guess. I mean, I can't see. I think it's behind you, but yeah. Yeah. F to reframe whatever you have selected.
Oh, it's right here. Oh. I don't know, I had to zoom out so far for that. But there it is. Looking great. Very nice, very nice. But yeah, that's basically it. It was really hard. I think like some of the scripting, not scripting, the animation was like really annoying trying to put it back together again or something, or there's a lot of difficulties. I don't remember what. I'm zoning out, blanking out. It's 8 o'clock. My meds are wearing off. You don't need to worry about that. But yeah, no, it was quite challenging to work on this. I was gonna be like, oh, I'm just gonna take like, it's gonna take like an hour or two, like 2 or 3 hours. It took me until 8 p.m. I don't know why it took that long. But
Okay, so I mean, there's a good lesson here for everybody, right? Especially early on, new program. You know, most of the time I'm doing things I'm showing you I've done for semesters before, so it's a little bit quicker. You know, it's gonna take more time than you think, right? This comes back to the time management thing from before, right? Especially because this is new, and if things go wrong, they can be very difficult to fix. In fact, it's better to sort of start over there, right? So yeah, that's another idea. Redo, don't fix. Usually the skill set to try and fix the existing thing is a lot higher than just doing it again. I don't mean like creating the whole project again from scratch. I mean like if this animated object goes really awry, like just delete the object, start over with this clean animation. Yeah. Yeah, that's a much better strategy than trying to fix it, because as we've seen over and over again, you know, there's so many checkboxes and drop-down menus, and if while you're trying to fix something, you put something in the wrong state, then that can mess up a ton of other stuff, and it just becomes, it's really hard and sometimes impossible to figure out like why this doesn't work, right? I mean, a lot of times I mean, that happens to everybody, including me, where it's like, "Buh, this doesn't work." At some point, I need to like pull the parachute on my sunk cost of trying to fix it. And be like, I'm just going to do it again. 90% of the time, it works the second time because I'm just like more dialed in. I'm paying attention. I'm not messing around. And only occasionally is it like, okay, well, I reproduced the same error and now I can sort of figure out what happened there. Cool. That was great. Really good job on the animation. The animation looked really tuned and had that nice like double bobble at the top.
I do have a question.
Yes.
Like something that something I wanted to do, but I just didn't really want to get into the nitty gritty of it.
Uh-huh.
Was I wanted to add like a randomizer of sorts, where basically either the pitch itself would vary between each time an object would be set to awake or would trigger. So it would like have a certain range of like, oh, it's gonna be in this pitch or this pitch in this range, or it would like play from a select like few sounds at random.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not all the same. But I'm pretty sure that would require quite a bit of scripting to do.
Yeah, I mean, it would require scripting, some scripting. Yeah. So I'll show you guys the animation speed script today, which randomizes the animation speed, which and we can sort of then build off of that. And then in the other template, there's a sound script that does exactly what we're talking about in terms of, in most instances, playing back for sound effects, playing back from a bank of effects randomly selected gives you a much more naturalistic result than playing the same one over and over again. But yeah, that one's in there already. We can look at some of the other stuff. Cool. Yeah, those are both good questions, and we'll get to that stuff soon. Here we go.
Hello. That's not it. This is my Unity project. I wish I could have been more clever with it, but it's low-key laggy on my computer, so I'm not gonna touch it any further.
Okay, after class here, you can show it to me and sort of see what's going on.
Fixed it because it's not like that anymore. I think I was just on the computer for too long and it just like started chugging or something.
Like it heated up? I mean,
I have no idea. It didn't give me any warnings or anything.
but now it's working?
And now it's fine.
Okay.
You know, funny enough that you mentioned that, the first time I ran Unity, I could not understand why it is so framey and laggy and slow. Turns out, apparently Unity doesn't play well with G-Sync. So if you have like an RTX graphics card and it has G-Sync on it, disable it.
Okay.
I don't know what this thing has, it's a small computer.
Yeah.
I think if it's anything above a 40 RTX card, then it's gonna have G-Sync. It's like a software thing. It seems to be okay now. It was just laggy when I decided to record the video. I have no idea what caused that. Because I went and I showed my brother, I was like, look at what I've been making for 3 hours and it didn't lag at all. So I don't know.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, the you're doing more work when you're recording the video and playing Unity, right? And so that as long as it's not laggy for you actually working, which it's good now, right? Today I'll show you guys how to record a video out of the editor so that if it's really bad when you go to make your presentation video, you can play a video of what happened rather than trying to run all of Unity at the same time. And also not having a bunch of junk open like I do at school, right? So if you're having any performance problems, just whatever your current, like just OBS and just Unity, not also Blender, also Substance Painter, also all the other stuff, right? So, okay, but I'm glad it's working better when you're working.
I'll run it.
And just to reiterate for everybody else, if you have a laptop and you're doing this kind of work, plug it in. That's the biggest thing, right? It goes.
I have it plugged in and it was on my desk station. So I don't know. I think I was just on it for too long.
Yeah.
Pretty fire. Here are my spinners. And spawn them. See, you see what I mean? It's pretty laggy. Here's the walls. And then the light. I don't know why it's so laggy. I'm just gonna assume it's the computer chugging because all these animations are fine by themselves. So whatever.
Oh, and maybe the OBS settings too. Let's look at that after class real quick.
the process of animating a prefab. I think, I don't know, I just dragged mine into the thing and they work fine, so I
Drag from game object to asset. That's the answer I was looking for.
I don't know. That's about it. If anyone knows how to make this computer not blow up when I add too many objects, that'd be fire. Or if I just actually did something wrong and it's just laggy. Other than that, I'm not super worried. It is what it is. You guys want to see me?
What did you say at the end? Jacob says to very fun, Punchy. I love the wacky design of everything.
Also, I've got a feeling you really love pizza. I've got a feeling you really love pizza.
I mean, who doesn't like pizza? No one here doesn't like pizza, right? Or at least you're not telling me right now.
One of my favorite pizzas is Hawaiian. I don't care what people say about pineapple.
Yeah, people who don't like Hawaiian pizza are just, it's not, not good.
All right.
Speaking of Jacob, here.
Hello, ABC 200. Welcome to our little interactive ball game. Sorry if the audio is a little bit disjointed. I'm having to record this in post and on like my earbud mic, so probably not going to be the best. But anyways, so here we go. Here's where going into play mode. So you can see here in a second we've got our balls, which they're gonna bounce once on click, right about here. Yep, they'll bounce very nicely. And then you'll see that we have the lights up top. So we have the fan first, fan spinning, boom, boom, boom. And you click it once and it spins. We have lights on the top left. So the bottom button is going to turn our lights off, and the top button is going to turn our lights on, a little bit of a flicker. Nice. All right. The bottom right button, you'll see there's one of our core elements. We've got our pill dropping. The balls can interact with it, and it turns on a little light whenever you spawn one of the prefabs. So got our red light for the pills, and you'll see in a second here we have our yellow light for the heads, or for the cubes. You can see you'll catch it in a second when I go to the textures, but there's like a head texture on the cube. My idea was for the game to be like heads and meds. Yeah, there's that. Take that for what you will. So yeah, everything seems to interact pretty good. The only thing I couldn't get working, which I'll mention at the end, was like the collision boxes for the pipes. But for now, you can see here's our setup. You can see there's...
Oh, your audio cut out. Here you are showing us the prefab and the pipe, and this box.
A little bit more of its glory. So I did hand paint all of these in Blender, which was a lot of fun, and definitely what took up like the most amount of my time, though, for sure. So yeah, and then finally.
So the microphone isn't that great. It's like cutting in and out, like totally out. So it makes me feel like, I feel like it was not totally plugged in.
So I cleaned up the animation of the bouncing ball a good bit since last week, and thanks to the critiques and like the lecture, I got it feeling a little bit better. The frames at the start are more spread out, so it doesn't feel as weirdly tight. We've got our anticipation, our stretch, and then it kind of wobbles at the top, and then it'll come back down, and then it bounces in and then recompresses to its normal shape, and it kind of hopefully feels like it has some weight to it. Again, that coyote time too, that really helped me kind of sell the movement.
Yeah, the animation looks great, and I really like the visual presentation, putting all these together in an array like that. And clearly you used some Blender, you've done some blending, got a nice.
So yeah, I think that's kind of everything. We should have all 7 of our textures. We have the ball, the pipe, the fan, the head, the med, and both of the lights, and then maybe like one other thing that I'm forgetting. My 2 questions for this week. How do you change the text of buttons? I know people did it. I am assuming I'm just being silly because I could not figure it out to save my life. And then second, making like custom uh, like collision boxes for elements because I just had to use kind of whatever came in Unity for the pipes that the things were supposed to fall into, the ones on the left and right. But I couldn't find one that had like a concave center, and so it didn't really work out to let things fall into it gameplay wise. So yeah, those are my two questions: the button and custom collision boxes.
The button. If we make a new UI button, and if you unfold, yeah, there should be the TextMesh Pro object below the button. If you click on the TextMesh Pro, then you can edit the text on the button. There you go. And now you have whatever you want on the button there. So that's if this, no, like that should be there. You just have to unfold one more time. I'm sure that was it. And then in terms of the box or the collision box, the using a mesh collider instead of a shape collider, right? So here the cylinder has a capsule collider on it, but I'm going to get rid of that. Remove component. I'm going to add the mesh collider. There we go. And yeah, so here it adopts the shape. And so if you put the mesh collider on something and then you clicked convex, it should respect certainly that kind of thing, like doing a pipe. If it has like a million holes in it or a lot, then there's some other issues there. And you can actually, there's some other ways around this. In fact, in the new version, I think there's some version of automatic mesh creation, right? As we talked about before, you ideally don't want to just be using the actual visual mesh as the collider because that ends up being, in most cases, really expensive. But cool, that looked great. Really great visual design on that. I think everyone loved it, right? Right? Yes. Yeah, he can't hear you. Where is it? Where is all my stuff? Over here. That was Jacob's. And Colette. And here we are.
Okay, here's my game. So I have, let's see, I have a button for these three things over here. So when you click on it, it spawns capsules. And you can pick a color. So yellow, red, blue, they all spawn and then they kind of interact with this object here that is rotating. I also put the glowing texture on it, and I have these as well. So these all click and stop. So this is my spinning object that clicks, and then these are going to be my bouncing balls with squash and stretch that click all on their own. These are prefabs, and then the capsules I made as well, obviously. And then I have 7 different materials. So I have this orange one, the pink one on the sphere, the neon one, and then the 3 for the capsules. That's 6. And then the 7th is the plain. It's just like a dull green. And then I have this button over here to turn the light off and then back on. And that's about it. So yeah.
Great. Yeah, everything looks really good there. Definitely did all of the things. And the animation looks really good. Bouncing ball looks squishy, which is what we're after. Great. Here's Montana's.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and show my thing. It's not done because I couldn't figure it out in time. I've been working on it for the past like 3 days and I'm struggling, but this is what I have so far.
Did you post a question on Discord? Did I miss it? Or
I was like working with people,
okay.
working with Hinge, and
Okay.
I kept watching the videos, but how you do it is like kind of hard for me to understand how to do anything the way you explain it.
Okay. All right. What would be easier to understand? Like what?
Like more like a walkthrough, and like this is what it's gonna look like if you like mess up.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll try and do more of the things if things go awry.
I got this thing to spin. This thing is still bouncing out of the squash and stretch, and I have the bounce on the balls done. I just can't figure out how to do it so that there's like the button and it only jumps once. I can't figure that out yet. And because I've been trying to figure that out, so I didn't have time for anything else. But yeah, that's basically all I have. What's hard is basically everything. I don't really understand it. And the easy part is, I guess just the actual animation and keyframe things. That's pretty self-explanatory, but, yeah. Sorry it's not done. I'm gonna get it done. I just need a lot of help. Like a lot of help. So,
Okay. And the tutor is online now. Have you talked to Fabio at all yet? All it is like 10 to 4 Tuesday and Wednesday, and by appointment. So if you can't make either of those, just send him an email. Just let him know what time you can, because I know he's available other times.
like, I don't, on Tuesdays, I start at 10 and I don't get home till like 7, like
Okay.
7:30.
And Wednesdays?
Wednesdays, I also don't get home till like 7 or something. It's just
Okay. So just message him on Discord, whatever time you are available. Like, chances are, like, he has other hours he can allocate throughout the week. So that would be also another good one. Maya.
Hello, here is my project. Play mode. Lights. Help. Spawn button. I say the process of reusing the prefab was these two, the bouncing ball, because every time I was trying to move it to a new location, it would play it on the original location. So I got that fixed. But
Oh, so the parenting issue there? Okay. But you got it worked out.
yeah. I don't really have any questions. Thank you.
Cool. You got everything happening there, the spinning and the spawning. And now we know how to bring in more stuff, so people will be able to do things that are a little bit more of your style this week, I hope.
Hello, and to demonstrate the requirements for this animation interactivity assignment, I'll go down the list. So for the 3 different prefabs, I have the cylinder, the capsule, a cylinder, and cube. And then for the 7 different materials, the cylinders are 1. Each of the spheres have different ones. And then the capsule itself, the cube, and then this spinning object right here. And then for a falling object that interacts with a spinning object. For a falling prefab that interacts with the spinning object. Just give it a second, and there you go. And and then a spawn button. It drops prefabs, and then a well animated squash and stretch are these three spheres right here, and then spinning object that interact. Well, I already did that one. And then a button that turns on and off the lights. Off, on. And then a glowing object is the capsules. And an object that spins once when clicked are the cylinders. And that's it. And
Cool. Excellent.
I don't have any questions. So
And everybody's got their tint happening, so they know they're in play mode. Okay, good. I think that's everybody. Let me just double check. Because we did Andre, Alenka, KJ, Ezra. Okay. That's everybody. Okay, great. Here we go. Okay. Let me save this. What's the other scene here? Okay. Why we're using Unity? Because we're making stuff that's interactive in real time, right? So that you can interact with it, games, interactive applications, right? However, it is useful to be able to render a movie. This could be useful for a few reasons. One, if just for class reasons you can't run Unity while you're recording, you can record a video of what happens in Unity and then sort of explain that, right? So for class, that would be one. For another one here is client preview. Building the actual interactive application can be a bunch of steps, and there can be things that go wrong. Just giving someone a video that they can just click and watch, even though they're not interacting with it, they see how it works. This is super useful. And then also for your portfolio, right? We'll make playable versions of the game, but not everyone is going to, when they look at your portfolio, like download the entire game and play the game to see your portfolio. So you gotta be able to make trailers / previews / sizzle reels of what it is that you've made here that's interactive. So for all of these reasons, it's nice to be able to make a movie, and we can do that. How do we make a movie? We do this one. We get a package. So a package in the package manager. Have we added anything in the package manager yet? I don't think we have. And so this is the one appropriately called Unity Recorder. And so, yeah, we haven't added any packages, right? At this point? No. Okay. So, a package is going to be roughly equivalent to like a plugin or a Blender add-on, right? There's like the core of Unity, and then there's other stuff. And these can come a few different places. One is the official Unity packages. These are like the official Blender add-ons. They're kind of like there, and you just sort of enable them, and they're pretty much managed by Unity itself, and for the most part, they work. You can also get them from the asset store. Just like in Blender, there's whatever the Blender store is called now. I can't remember. Where you can get things, and they may or may not work with your version and everything else, right? So those things. So this one, Unity Recorder, is an official Unity package. If we come over here to Window and the appropriately named, I can't zoom in on it for some reason, Package Manager. And it opens up a second window here. And in this case, we need to know where the package is coming from. And for right now, most of the stuff, maybe everything I'll tell you to use, is in the Unity registry, meaning like ones that are officially coming from Unity. This essentially just shows you what packages are currently in the project. These are the ones that are just kind of installed by default. Then if you come here, these are ones that you can install from Unity. And so if we look for record, there it is, Unity Recorder, and you can install this. And this should be safe. Let's cross our fingers and make sure everything goes well. There we go. And so how do you know it's in there? I mean, this will change from install to remove. And then if you go to in project, you should see the package in the project now. There it is. Cool. All right. So how do we actually record something? So what do you record? By default, it's going to record the, the view of the person playing the game here. And if we come in here to window, yeah, window, general, recorder window. There we go. We get this. And I usually dock this over here so we can see what's happening. Okay. Now we're just going to make an MP4 of whatever the output is. And so we need to add a recorder. We need to say movie. And record the game view. Use the resolution that we currently have is fine for now. Also, just rendering it at 30 frames per second is fine for now. And then down here, this is where it will go. And so by default, it's going to make another folder in your project called recordings, and it'll go there. And so if we, what is it missing here? The MP4 format does not support that resolution. Okay, and so here, let's go to 720. There we go. All right, and so now, yeah, that'll work. So not too big. Like this is just either you're showing something someone quickly, or you just need to make a quick movie. So that'll do it. And so now you can either start the game and then start recording, or if you just press the start recording button, it'll start the game and start recording. So there we go. It will do its thing. The game that you're interacting with may be noticeably slower while you're recording, but that's okay. When the recording itself, like it'll compensate for that. The recording itself will be smooth, okay? And so now we recorded, we stopped. If we go to our project, if we go to our project folder, now we have this folder called recordings. Now we look in recordings, and there's the movie of the output, right? And so now you've got this that then you can, put into After Effects, edit somewhere else, post to Discord, use in your OBS presentation, whatever it is you need to do, all that stuff there. And so that's a really useful one to have in place here. And yeah, sometimes I actually dock this down here because it doesn't really need that much screen space. And so that's there. But in terms of the other packages, things that you can explore over here, Unity Asset Store is where there's other packages. There's both free and paid stuff, but when you're looking at things here, yeah, some of them may not work, and some of them may also break the project. And so for right now, I'd recommend staying away from those. Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff there, but there's everything from like 3D assets, 2D assets, sound effects, other tools and scripts and stuff, things like that. But usually waiting till later when you got a little bit better idea what's happening with those things, it makes it a little bit easier. Okay, any questions or any questions make sense about the recording here? Add the recorder package, then you're able to record the MP4s. Yeah, just down here, why is my zoom not really working? Yeah, you're not making an animation clip, you're making a movie. That's the only thing that I think is kind of maybe not obvious there. Okay, then in addition to all the stuff we talked about on Monday with our new setup, bringing in all different kinds of assets into Unity, Punchy's question about animating or randomizing things does require some kind of scripting. If we come back and look at some of the scripts that we have, one that we use all the time randomizes animation speed. So let's grab that and use that in what we have here. Let me turn a few things off. Here, turn this back on. Okay, so this is the 2D image sequence I brought in from, in this case, it was an image sequence that was rendered from Blender, and it has a transparent background. So that means it's what kind of file? What are the images? PNGs, right? Because we can't have JPEGs with transparency. Also, in the back here, see this plane? What's going on here? Yeah. So it disappears when we look at it from the back. Did I talk about this on Monday? Okay. Why does it disappear? Because the back side is invisible. The only faces one direction. And Punchy's right, this is called back face culling. And this is on by default in Unity. And so this is different than Blender. Blender, it is off by default. You'll see both sides of something. Here it's on by default. You can set it to not do that in the material. So if we click on the material here, and then we come up to the very top, render face, by default it's set to front. We can set it to both, and now the plane appears more like a piece of paper. We see both sides of it, right? So that is on a per material basis there, whether or not we have that. Okay, now let's turn that off for a second, and we have our PNGs with this. Let's turn this bouncing ball into a proper prefab, and so I am going to return it to the center with reset. Then I am going to make it a parent So I'll come over here and do the same thing that we did before. Create empty parent. There we go. And this will be 2D bouncing ball. Excellent. Then let's prefab this. So we'll grab prefabs over here and drag this down like so. Cool. And then that means that I should be able to drag in multiple copies of this from here. And then because the animation is in the prefab, if I hit play, they all play. But the thing that doesn't, the obvious thing here is like they all play exactly the same, right? And so if we're building any sort of environment, not even quote unquote realistic environments, just anything that's like more interesting, everything is not always in sync, right? And based on what we know right now, the only way we could change the speed would be essentially duplicating the entire prefab, going into the animator, grabbing this, and then adjusting the speed. But that's going to require duplicating, making a new prefab for each ball, which defeats the purpose of making prefabs. So that's not what you want to do. Scripting to the rescue. What do we want to do? We want to have each of these spheres create a new random speed, a random playback speed. And in this case, we're going to do it at startup, right? When the game starts, every ball is going to essentially hit the button on a random number generator, use that number for its speed, and then play back at that speed. And that is what this script does right here. Once I grab it. Can I drag stuff into the window today? Let's see. Nope. There we go. Added it to the folder. Once you add a new script, it always needs to think about it for a second and check the console. There's no new errors. Every time you add a script, definitely just look over there to make sure it hasn't spewed a bunch of errors, because at that point, knowing what you know, you should just remove it, and that would be the only thing to do at this point. Okay, so animation speed, we can put it on an object and randomize the animation speed. So if we grab, let's actually just search for it. There it is, animation speed. And it has two parameters, a min and a max. And so just like the time destroy, it randomly selects a number between this and this. And so by default, it just plays it back at the regular speed. But I'm going to say 0.25 and 2. And this, which one here did I put it on? I put it on this one. Let's move that one up so it's more visually obvious. There we go. This one that's up in the sky. So now, watch this one up in the sky. When I play back, it resets itself at the beginning. Right, so now this one, see how it doesn't line up with the other ones, right? It's going at its own rate. And if I play again, every time, when does the random number happen? In this script, the random number happens at startup. When I start the game, it picks a new random number and is different. In this case, it picked something very slow. And so it's playing back much slower than the other ones. That's great. But do I have to drag the script to all the other objects? No. What should I do instead? Yeah. I'm editing to a prefab already, so I just edit the prefab and it'll populate to the other things, right? And so I can double click on the prefab, go in the prefab editing mode, and this is another instance where there's 2 game objects, right? And so which one does the script go on? Why do you think it's the child in this case?
Because the position, or like, I guess if the position of the child is relative to the parent, then I guess the scripting of the child should do the same thing.
Yeah, that's good. This script is talking to the animator, right? Because that's the thing that controls the speed of the animation playback. And so it needs to be on the thing that has an animator. And so the top level doesn't have anything. In this case, this is where you'd want to put it. And so we'll add the speed script. We'll make it 0.25 and 2. And then we're in prefab edit mode. Back out. And now if we hit play, there we go. Now they all go at different speeds, somewhere in between the min and the max. And additionally, like this is random every time the game starts, right? So quasi sort of roguelike functionality here, in that we get a different sort of set of things happening every time. And so anything, this doesn't apply to physics animation because all of that is controlled by the physics engine. This is keyframe animation, right? Things that it's speaking directly to the animator. So anything that has the animator component, that has to be, you'll use this one all the time, right? Are you making a prefab that has keyframe animation? That's something that is not the main, hero character, like it's some other environmental thing, then you're probably using this script just to make sure you just get this level of variety, right? So yeah. In terms of the min and max, remember 1 is regular, obviously, but then in Unity, lower than 1 is slower. So 0.25 is like quarter speed, and 2 is twice as fast. So, yeah. Now you could do something where you duplicate, 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 right? And now you get really emergent stuff happening because everything is going to be coming at a different speed. They don't randomize, this script does not randomize the starting point. And so when the game starts, they may look sort of more synchronized, but they would drift then as the game goes on more. Maybe we'll throw that in at some point. But, okay, so that's in place. Let's talk a little bit, start to open the door about Punchy's other question in terms of like randomizing other stuff. All of that is in scripts. And so what you need to know for now, right, this means we're writing code. I'm not going to have you guys like manifest code out of nothing probably at all. But being able to know, being able to not have a heart attack if you open a script is probably a good skill. You can get a lot done by taking existing code and tweaking it just a little bit. You can get a ton done that way. So the things I would write down here is what language is Unity using here? Anybody know? Very good. Did I already tell you that? Or do you guys just know? You just know it. Great. C#, right? This is, the syntax looks a lot like JavaScript for the most part, but it's, Microsoft thing. And then the main things that we're going to look at here for right now is we're going to see something like variables. These are going to be things that we can turn into a parameter in the Unity interface, right? So when you make a script correctly or in a usable way, ideally you don't have to go into the code to mess with it all the time. You make it in a way, it's like designing some sort of piece of electronics. Yes, you can change the electronics by going in there and messing with the circuit board, but it's much better to have like knobs and buttons that make sense to allow you to interact with the thing. And in addition to that, there's two main things to be aware of. Well, variable, I like to use this analogy. Variables are like nouns. They're values, things that you're stored. The other big programming concept to be aware of is functions. These are like verbs. They do something, usually with nouns, right? The dog runs. Jane opens the door, whatever it is, right? And there's some specific functions that we need to know. One is start. This is a function that runs one time, and that's when the game starts up. This is necessary because there's a lot of things you need to do sort of setting the table in terms of like, well, we need to configure all this stuff so that things can happen later in the game. And this is a common need. And then there's another one called update. And this one runs every frame. So this is, Unity goes to render a new frame, and it runs the update function, reads all the code in the update function, and does all the update stuff on each object, right? And so this is running at, 60 FPS, right? The code is running 60 times a second on each object. So if we look at this one's fairly simple. We can look at it, scripts here. So if you double click on the script, it'll open Microsoft Visual Studio, which you downloaded when you downloaded Unity. Microsoft Visual Studio is a IDE, which is Interactive Development Environment. Is that what the I stands for? Doesn't matter. This is something for editing code. Microsoft Visual Studio is terribly named. It doesn't really feel like a studio, and there's nothing particularly visual about it. Microsoft. It just allows you to edit the C#. Okay. There's other programs that do this, but this is the one that comes with Unity, and so that's what opens when you double click on. Does anyone open this by accident by double clicking one of the C# scripts in the asset view? Okay. You opened it on purpose? Okay, well, good. Yeah, but you opened it. That's the, yeah. Okay. Then let's look over here. So I clicked on it, and here is Microsoft Visual Studio. And yeah, this is the animation speed script. Let's just get a basic layout of what's going on here. At the top, this refers to the different libraries. So you're using a bunch of words and phrases and functions in the script, and it needs to look those things up, and this is where it's going to look in these different places. Most of the time this is already there by default. If you just make a new script, the basic libraries are already there in the audio populated thing. Down here, this is the class, and so this is essentially where everything is happening. And then mono behavior is the name for the standard Unity class. This is we don't need to get into what that means, just know that it needs to be there. Then up here, these are what I was referring to before. These are variables, right? And so when you change the min and the max, you're actually changing the variables. And so each variable has a name, and you'll see that this is called animation speed min and animation speed max there. By default, they're both set to 1. So to look at this, this is the name of the variable. Every variable needs to have a name so that the computer can have a distinct name for that tiny bit of memory, and it can go back and find that piece of memory. this name here, you decide what the name is. It could be just Bob, right? But that would be not a great name. That would work if you correctly used Bob throughout the code, but it's not a great practice because if you hand it off to someone else, they don't know what variable Bob the variable does. So it's really good to name things with these sort of longer names, no spaces in these. You can't have a space in a variable name in C#. And you want to name them according to what they do. So that, I mean, it's one thing to write code that you give to someone else. That's very difficult in terms of like what I had in my mind. I showed it to you and you understood what I did. Very, very hard, right? It's even hard for me to understand what I did in the past, right? If I don't correctly name things, I can open up stuff, anything I've made in the past and be like, oh, geez, I'm not sure what I was thinking, even though I'm trying to name these correctly. This is the initial value for it. So 1f, we'll get to the f in a second, but essentially just 1. And then over here we have float. This is the kind of thing that we're storing in the variable. And then public means that it's going to show up in the interface. We'll be able to adjust it, right? And so these two variables show up here, right? So these two numbers are overriding that 1. The min is being replaced with 0.25, and the max is being replaced with 2. It's just that they need the best practice is to have a value here, so that if the person in the editor doesn't give it a value, it's equal to something, right? Then over here, we'll talk more about data later, but for the most part, there's 2 different kinds of numbers, more than 2, but 2 that you need to know about for right now for the computer. There's an integer. Arlinka, give me 3 integers. 1, 2, 3, 4. 43 is also an integer, right? That's an integer, right? No decimal points, just whole numbers, right? And then everybody knows that one from math class. That's what they're called in coding, so that works pretty well. The one that you probably didn't learn in math class, perhaps, I don't know how math class is taught these days, is a floating number, which just means it's a decimal point number, right? So 1.1, 2 point whatever, right? These are all floats. There's an issue in terms of how many decimal points we have. We're not going to address that right now. So these are 2 different ways we can store numbers, right? And so you have to think about what it is that you're doing, and does it like spawn, the amount of spawns in a spawning script. That would be an integer, because you can't spawn half a thing, right? You either spawn an enemy or you don't spawn an enemy. You can't spawn 2.5 enemies. It doesn't mean anything, right? Like you can't have half of one of those. So that would be an integer, the number of game objects, number of spawns, that kind of thing. Float, right, position stuff, right? Like the x position of something would be a float, right? Because that could be 1, or it could be any decimal value, on the grid of space. Those would be two possible examples there. So those are just 2 of many different types of data that we can store in the computer, right? But those are used often, and in a lot of the stuff that we do here at the beginning, those will be important. And so that's what this is telling us. If this was only going to be ints, it would look like this. You would say int instead of float. That tells you the type of thing. And then because it says float, that's why it has this f after it. And so in C#, if you type a float, it needs to say 2 point whatever f. That's telling it it's a float. That's just a C# syntax thing. Okay. And so those are the variables that we're using. And then here are those 2 functions I talked about. So if the code is well written, usually things are visually spaced out there so that you can sort of make sense of the sections of it, right? You can tell this is a section, this is a section, this is a section, and this is a section, right? So if it's well done, that usually works. This is important. // This is a comment. And so when you put // at the beginning of the line, it tells the computer to ignore this line. And so this is where you save your future self from your past self, right? You can write notes as to what all of this stuff does. Like even if once you get good at this, being good at it means that you write a lot of comments so that you know what's happening there in just plain English, not in code, right? Because even your future self presumably reads code to some extent, but having the comments super important. My color coding here may be different from what you get when you just started up, because this is some color scheme that I picked for my Visual Studio Windows profile, but it's not the specific color that matters here. It's the fact that things are different colors makes the code way more readable. Anyways, so this is a comment, this is a comment, and these comments are useful here. This is used for initialization. Like I said, void start, this is the start function. And so this runs function. This runs once at the beginning of the game. This word tends to throw people off. Void. That seems kind of weird. Why is that even there? Arlinka?
It's to say that it's to run something that won't necessarily give you an output. It's just going to run instruction.
Yeah. So function is like a verb, right? And so like adding stuff is a verb, right? That's a function. But when you add, like if you had a function that does adding and you gave it 2 and 2, it would return 4, okay? And in that case, the add function, instead of being void, it would say return, okay? It would say return int or return float or whatever. For a lot of what we do in this class and in game stuff in general, a lot of the functions will start with void because they're not outputting stuff. They're just drawing things on the screen, which is not an output in this context, right? Like we're concerned with like making things happen visually, right? And so that means we're not necessarily outputting numbers. We're just making it draw more stuff or move stuff around, that kind of thing, right? And so void that's what that means, right? And so that's why both of these functions, the one that runs once at the beginning and the one that runs every frame, these are not outputting things. Yeah, you'll see other functions that may have stuff here, but for a lot of ours, they'll say void. Okay. And then, yeah, this is the stuff that runs at the beginning, and then this particular script doesn't do anything each frame. Like I said, this picks a random number at the beginning and then just uses that random number throughout the game, or just directly uses it to set the speed of the object, right? And so, yeah, let's not get into this too much, but what's happening here? What do you think is happening there? This is fairly straight ahead.
It's fetching a component of reference object.
Yeah, right. And so we know what the animator component is, right? And in this case, the function for getting the animator component is called getComponent. So thumbs up, someone did a good job naming that function, and that it like, I don't need to explain it to you. It should be fairly obvious, right? If you're doing a good job naming stuff, you shouldn't need a whole bunch of documentation about it. It should be fairly clear. And then, yeah, we need to set the speed parameter on that. And then this does the stuff that Punchy was talking about where I want to randomize stuff. And in order to randomize stuff, you need to generate a random number. And this is the C# code in Unity, the default one for generating a random number. And so it's random.range, and then it has 2 parameters. The animation speed min and the animation speed max, right? It just generates a random number between this number and that number. And we forwarded the min up to here, a variable, and we forwarded the max up to here, a variable. These are public, and so these variables get forwarded up to the interface here and here, which allows us to control the input of that random function. So we get both of those. We're able to set the number that ultimately ends up here and here. The conceptually, none of this is crazy. What is a big hang up is, it's very, the functionality of it ends up being very binary. And in this case, I guess, like, pun intended. Like, it's actually running binary code, right? Binary means 0 and 1. At the end of the day, everything in the computer is boiled down into 0 and 1s. How that happens is, we don't need to get into that right now. But binary also means like on or off, it works or it doesn't work. And, code requires a very specific syntax. And if it's not correct, it doesn't compile. So for instance, if I were to delete this semicolon and then save this, then come back to Unity, now it's not compiling and I get an error. And that means my entire game does not work, right? Just because I deleted one semicolon. And so this system is fragile, right? This is kind of everyone wishes it was not this fragile, but it's how it works at this point.
In the coding world, a missing semicolon is like the worst thing you can experience, because finding that small little character amongst a large amount of code is a nightmare.
Yeah. So I mean, Microsoft Visual Studio does do a lot of work here in that, like, if I double click, I'm not expecting you to do this, but I'm just sort of like, if you double click on the error, it'll open up the script if it's not already open. And then this is, a problem with the code, not a spell check indicator, right? And so in this case, the error that we got, semicolon expected. So that's, in terms of errors, this one's like, pretty useful. It's totally possible to just get a bunch of inscrutable gobbledygook in an error, but usually, if you're lucky and it's well written, then sometimes it's easy to fix. And so if I return and put a semicolon there and then save, right, because this is an asset and it has to be updated, then boom, we're back. And the game compiles, the error goes away, and we can go into play mode once again. Okay, so we've got, what do we have on our plate for this week? We've got our click on things, spawn things, be able to randomize the speed for keyframe animated objects, and then our cleanup script for things that we spawn, right? And I explained last time why this is important, so that you just can't spawn an infinite amount of things, because that would definitely crash the game. Okay. Yeah, there's obviously way more to say about this. I'm not expecting you to write this stuff, but just looking at it, I mean, does the general... This is a very simple script, not a whole lot going on, but like in terms of just seeing what's happening here, the more of these you see, let's just look at one other one to compare it. Yeah, time destroy. There we go. And so this is the time destroy. Notice the same sort of thing up here. Public floats that have float values. And then this one has something that's void start. And so this is happening when at the beginning. And so here we're using that random again because we're randomly setting the lifetime of these objects. And so this invoke is running this function, right? And so it's saying invoke cleanup. This is the function called cleanup. And the function called cleanup, the code for destroying a game object is destroy parentheses game object name, right? Or not necessarily name the variable containing the game object.
So I noticed on here, like yesterday, I was also being taught Python, coding and whatnot in C. There's a function called delta time, and I don't really see that here. Why do we not need delta time for this instance?
Delta time returns the amount of time that is passed between frames. So in this case, we are not we're not keeping track of time because it happens in invoke. It's built into invoke. That's what invoke is. It's run this function after this amount of time has passed. Okay? And so this invoke means I don't have to directly keep track of time. You'll use delta time when mostly that's for keeping the motion or the animation consistent when the FPS is variable, right? So that's why you need that so much when you're coding movement and things like that. If you didn't use delta time, if you just said every frame I'm going to add 1 to the X position of my object, which would move it across the screen, and you put that code into the update, it would you wouldn't know how many times this is being called because the frame rate of the game is variable, right? The game engine is going to run. You can set different things. You can tell it to try and hit a specific goal, like just run at 30 FPS, but you can tell it that, and if you do too much stuff, it'll slow down. And so if the frame rate slowed down and all of your movement code didn't use delta time and it was in the update, the objects would slow down as well. Yes.
I actually played a game once where I experienced this, where the coders forgot to use delta time. It's a Spyro Reignited trilogy game. One of the boss fights, if you play at 30 FPS, the game is easier. If you play at 60 FPS, the game is much harder.
Yeah.
Because it's this dragon-like character, but the body's like the sections of different game objects. And the higher frame rate causes the game objects to be closer together, making it much harder to hit. Where if you run it at 30 FPS, the game objects are further apart. Yeah.
So in this case, the compensating for this would look like different ways to do this. Something along the lines of x plus 1, all of this in parentheses, and I should have just typed parentheses first. That would have been easier. There we go. Times delta time. Right, because this is the actual number that's coming back here is 1/30th or 1/60th of a second, like a small decimal number, and so you're multiplying it by whatever this is. And so if the game slows down and there's more time between frames, that number gets bigger, and the amount you move per frame would scale up in order to make the apparent speed the same. So, great question. But yeah, in this case, invoke just has this timer built into it, and this is keeping track of that, right? So for a lot of things like this, this is used all the time in terms of, I just need a delay. I just need to do something later in the future. And so could I create a variable and keep track of my own time? yeah, it's just really unnecessary in this instance. So this just allows me to do this later at some point, right? And in this case, randomly later. So yeah, very similar. The other scripts here, if we looked at them, spawn single object, I think is very simple. Yeah, there we go. So this one just has this public function that says spawn single object, and this would be the word I would look at here, instantiate, right? This instantiate is just this fancy word for spawn, right? Usually a prefab, to make an instance of the prefab. And then this is the thing that you're spawning, this is where it goes, and this is whether or not it's rotated, right? And so, yeah, these are fairly clear. The other one is like Unity event stuff. Yeah, so void on mouse down. Remember, this script, this function happens at the beginning. This function happens every frame. And then when we have something like interaction, a lot of times it's like this. When does this happen? This happens when you click the mouse, right? That's part of why we're using a game engine. This is already in place. There's a function that's just sitting there that they're doing the work of like tracking if someone has clicked the mouse. And if they have, then you just put whatever code you want to have happen when someone clicks the mouse, you put it in between this curly bracket and this curly bracket. And so over here, yeah, it runs, this is a Unity event, and it's invoking that event. So we don't need to get into that right now. But yeah, so basic sort of setup here for those. Yeah. Okay, so what I want you guys to do this week is either convert or make something that you actually identify with here, like a piece of art that you've already made, right, that you've painted or drawn or procreated, or in terms of using the Procreate app, that was awkward. Whatever. Right? We've talked about this before. That's the reason I went through all these examples on Monday. And then turn it into an interactive experience using the stuff we already have, right? And so I'm going to want you to have a music track. I'm going to want you to have a click, right? And so you may want to take this art and turn it into like a full-blown FPS game. That is not this week's assignment. Right? We're talking about very similar to what we made last week. One scene, right? And I can click on things and things happen. But instead of just using a bunch of random shapes, I want you to actually use your art, right? Some of you have done way more 3D modeling, so you can use your 3D models if you want, right? We'll go over more of that later for those of you who haven't done as much modeling. You've all done some 2D art. And now we know about getting all that stuff in, right? For instance, still 2D stuff, 2D, right? We're going to have still. Those all need to get to PNG format, right? We want to have the transparent background so that you can put things in the scene, right? If they're going to be animated, right? Like Jana has a bunch of stuff you've done with characters already, right? A PNG sequence, right? So in all the different stuff that you've used, do you know how to get a PNG sequence out of them? Yeah. I mean, PNG sequence is a pretty standard animation format, right? It's the digital equivalent of a flipbook. It's just one frame, one PNG for each frame, right? So those are all usable for you this week, right? But it's just going to need to have some interactivity. You can click on things on the screen. I'll say you have to have a button. There'll be a soundtrack. There needs to be some sound effects. And I want you to do whatever you're most comfortable with here, right? If you're more comfortable making 2D things, stick with that, right? I want everybody to use at least one 2D and one 3D thing. For those of you doing mostly 2D stuff, it may be kind of awkward to integrate a 3D thing this week. Do your best, okay? We'll spend a lot of time talking about that later in terms of making 3D stuff and 2D stuff visually and stylistically work together. We don't really have the tools to address all of that this week, but I want everybody to do essentially the things I did on Monday, right? So that you know going forward, I know how to get sounds in, I know how to use music, I know how to use sound effects, I can animate things with keyframes, I can, give things rudimentary physics stuff, right? So think about how, with whatever it is that you've drawn or painted or whatever, how could I take that, maybe cut out some different parts in different PNGs and make parts of it animated and parts of it interactive. Okay? So it's not like a robust walk-through 3D environment. It's some interactive version of a piece of art that you've made before. If you want to draw something new or paint something new or digitally draw something new, that's fine. Don't let that derail the work this week. Does this make sense for everybody? Is something springing to mind of like, oh yeah, I have this thing I made and I could probably use that as my starting point? Things you made in AVC 100, anything private, like maybe you start with something you drew and then make some other things to go along with it, What's that?
I have a personal model that I've been working on passionately with, but I'm not really sure what I should do for the assignment necessarily, where to get it started.
Yeah, so a lot of if you don't have an idea, the stuff that you showed in your initial introduction, in terms of like, here's this piece of art I made that I identify with, taking one of those, right? Essentially, like, don't overcomplicate this. I'm not expecting, I just want you to be able to do something that is more visually identified with like whatever it is you want your art to look like. Because I know everybody here doesn't want their art to look like random cubes on a plane, right? No one really does. There's not a lot of room for that these days. Okay. Right? Think of this as more of like a picture you can click on, because we know how to do those things now, right? Like if I click on this part, something happens. If I click on that part, something happens, right? It doesn't need to all be like, in terms of the animation and everything, like related or even motivated, but just this has more of your visual identity in it. Whatever it is you want your stuff to look like, this looks more like that. Because on Monday we covered getting most possible things into the program, right? Because this is what has really derailed students in the past, is that they open up Unity, it's intimidating, right? And then they're like, they can't get their look and feel into Unity, which is why I spent all day Monday talking about like almost every possible thing you could use and put in here. You don't use Unity to draw the assets or make the models. It's not that thing. It's the thing that where you bring all these things together from other sources, and then you build the interactivity and the programming and the non-linearity in here. Does that sound better that time?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. Jana's shaking her head. Yes, right? Is it making sense? Okay. Yeah. And again, ideally taking something you've already have done, so you can focus on the part of like making this interactive, right? The main workflow here is like a challenge, mostly like even like something from painting class or drawing class, right? The main workflow here, like the high level view, would probably be, we want to be able to address different parts of it individually, right? And so this would mean, cutting it up I recommended Photoshop, but you all know other different image editors. Some of you also know Photoshop. The point is you can get it into separate PNG files, right? Because that's in that format, you're able to move it around, address the parts independently, put different parts on different components on different game objects. so on and so forth. Yes. Lightroom? Well, so like a photograph you've taken? Okay, so I would export the Lightroom as a PNG into Photoshop and then do the masking in Photoshop. Lightroom may do some of that, but that's not really what that's designed for, right? In terms of like cutting out different parts of it, like all of those masking tools, that's Photoshop's bread and butter there in terms of like, at the very least, just drawing the lasso mask, right? Or using the object select or these other tools that you guys have used, right? So in terms of what to take out of Lightroom, for a photograph, exporting a PNG from Lightroom, which you know how to do, yeah, is probably your best option. You could export a PSD, but in the case of like a single photograph, like I don't think the PSD really offers any advantage there. It's not like the photograph is in layers, right? And so that's why you would use a PSD, is that you want to preserve a multi-layer thing going between applications, and like the image from the camera is just one image. So just export a PNG from Lightroom, bring that into Photoshop, and then do your snipping and cutting in there. Good question. Right, I didn't say photograph, and let's put that right here. Photo, right? And then, yeah, Finch, you've got your animation sequences from Procreate, right? Yep. Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing them next week, being things that play when I click on them.
I hope that works.
Yes.
Does it have to be your own, like if we're doing characters, does it have to be our own original character?
No, this week I'll allow it. Okay. So in general, right, I know a lot of you have art that you've done as, fan art, or like I drew Sonic the Hedgehog or whatever. For this week, in the interest of like having stuff to do, like in a starting point, that's fine. In general, going forward, my general stance on this is not that like I hate Sonic the Hedgehog and I don't want to see his ugly face on my screen. It's that I think you, as people trying to get hired, should promote your own intellectual property, right? Having a portfolio full of Pokemon fan art has limited professional applications, right? So that's why I encourage everyone to put your own ideas forward, right? What about your weird hedgehog design, right? Not Sonic. Prioritize your own ideas, right? And yeah, it just professionally, someone goes to hire you, they click on the thing, and your whole portfolio is just versions of Optimus Prime, and they want you to make a logo for their business. Those things don't really line up, right? So there's that. But this week, I know some of you have a lot of that kind of thing already ready, and so yes, we'll say okay this week. And then because we're going to be making games here, again, not making, Mario, whatever, that's not what we're doing. Like, come up with your own idea. You guys have great ideas. I'm more interested in them than your interpretation of existing intellectual property. It also presents problems for you in terms of like having your portfolio online, depending on what it is that you're, like Nintendo, a notoriously litigious organization. Not that they're really interested in like yanking down student fan art sites, but like there's possible problems there in the future. So there's also that aspect to be aware of. So, and with that in mind, I showed you the YouTube music library this week. Please use that, all right, so that we don't run into that problem for the class in terms of everybody using some music that's been copyrighted, because then that causes problems with the YouTube streaming, just for class. Again, the fact that we're not covered by the blanket educational exemption for the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and YouTube doesn't see it that way, I find perpetually irritating as a person. But this is the in this instance, YouTube is providing a big service in that I can record 5 hours of lecture a week, have it automatically timestamped and transcribed for you, and you can go back and look at it at your leisure, which is a significant, plus for free, right? Like, it's just part of our Google account. So that's not nothing. And so given that, we'll play by their rules in this instance. Okay, so now does that seem like less of a daunting task for everybody? Okay. Remember, I'm just saying, put more of your visual identity into it. It doesn't you don't need to hang your entire artistic future on this project, right? It doesn't, just make something that you visually identify with more than a singular sphere on a plane, which I understand is dry. We were just trying to get going. We've done that. Everyone demonstrated that this week. Now that we know how to do other stuff and bring in other visual assets, try and use what we've used, but with something that you're like, oh, okay, this is a little bit more my vibe. Does that sound easier for everybody? Okay. All right. Well, I'm interested. This is the first time, this is the first time we're doing this version of this project in this version of the class. So I look forward to seeing what everyone does. So I go back and forth between this, right? Last week, meet these requirements kind of project. This week, it's a little bit more loosey-goosey, right? So, maybe you have to expand your capacity for the unknown this week. Okay, great. We will call it a day there if everybody's good, because there's a lot to do, a lot to go back on. I'll try to have the transcript search engine updated tomorrow morning-ish, and the assignment posted as soon as I can. But everyone has heard me say exactly what it is, so there's that. So feel free to get started there. Okay, let me just make sure that no one's asking questions online. Fabio says, if you guys need support out of my office hours, please just message me on Discord and I can schedule, which is great. Okay, everybody else who's still there, Jacob, Max, KJ, who else was there? Super. All right, great work this week. Everybody did a good job getting this done. Have some fun trying to play around in this sandbox. And I will talk to you all on Monday.